I'm Dave Tussing, and you're listening to George Fox Talks Leadership. Kayode, it's really good to see you today.
Good to see you, Dave.
So excited for this conversation and how it can just unfold and what it can help bring to people to just learn about some of your wonderful experiences as other people navigate their careers and lives. Kayode, you and I first met a couple years ago when we were at MIT together doing some classes. For everyone who doesn't know you yet, you're the founder and CEO of Caena.io, which is a fintech company, and you're building tools to simplify the fundraising process for startups and private investment firms, which is super cool. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit today. Before Caena, you worked for 14 years in the financial services industry across retail banking, strategy, and investment banking. And the most significant stint was in investment banking, where you were the VP of leveraged finance at Standard Chartered Bank. And that was when I had first met you. You were in that role, I believe.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of great ongoing education in your years. Kayode is an associate alumnus of MIT Sloan Management School. He holds a master's in science in international management from University of Liverpool and a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from OAU in Nigeria. So it's really great to have you with us today and to hear about your story, and let's just get rolling. So maybe you can talk a little about where you grew up and how you got into banking. That was really fascinating to me when we spoke before.
Yeah, thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. So I grew up in a town called Ibadan in Nigeria. It's in southwest Nigeria, about 100 kilometers away from Lagos, the economic capital. I had what I can describe as very humble background, and that's put it in nicely. My parents had 3 children, but there was never, so much. There was just enough to send us to school. My parents knew they would sacrifice everything for our education. They imbibed that in us, but there was almost never any time where we had excess. It's that kind of loving, warm home I grew up in. And it was just one step after the other, schooling. I had all my schooling, all my years in Nigeria. I never left the country. And I got into banking by accident. We'll probably revisit that theme so many times throughout this conversation. But I'll say there are 2 things that probably led me to the banking path. One was my first startup, which was while I was in university. And that came about as a cause of adversity as well. That got me to start a company then. I'll probably touch on it later on. Yep. But I think that experience while being a student and running a business, just exposed me, dragged me out of the mechanical engineering I was studying into the world of business. And I realized, this is actually seems much more interesting to me than mechanical engineering. So by the time I was leaving school, I knew that I probably wouldn't practice engineering. And, I had some friends and we're talking, I think that far I always have friends like you, Dave, who will come up with opportunities or talk to you about different things. And one of them said to me, I heard about this, this vacancy, we should apply. I'm like, you know what? I've never heard about this bank. It's an international bank. But you know what? You said, let's apply. Cut a long story short, that's how I went through the very tough process and got into the bank. And when I got the offer, I also had another offer with an oil firm, which was going to pay me, I think 3 times what the bank was going to pay.
Wow.
But at some point during that process, I sat down somewhere. I had a day retreat. I had my Bible. I prayed, and I kind of charted out my path in life. And that was in January 2007. So by the time I had these competing offers in July 2007, it was quite clear, that I would go for banking, even though the other, the other one was with an American company, ExxonMobil, was drilling engineering role. But I was quite clear that this was more of my calling based on, the kind of conversation I had with self, I had with God.
Yeah.
So I think that's my roundabout way of answering the question of how I got into banking.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I think that's just a wonderful um, explanation of a lot of things that I've thought about over the years too. If we're always chasing just money as a priority, we'll end up something very different than if we're trying to figure out what our values are and what our calling is and really where God wants us to be. And that often is a different place than just the money first. um,
Absolutely.
and so maybe you can talk a little more about kind of the values that you and your priorities in life, because I think in a moment you'll also talk about how that formed a solid foundation as you've navigated your career and had to make some tough choices.
Yes, so I think the what I just glossed over, about that two offers, and I'll say was the maybe the up to that point in time, and maybe up till now, one of the biggest choices I've had to make, which to a lot of people, seemed like extremely foolish or just a lot of people could not understand. I mean, how does one of the world's biggest companies at that time make you an offer and you'll say no? I mean,
Yep.
I probably haven't spoken about this, but somebody called me. I'm like, are you really sure what you're talking about? The recruitment process is extremely tough. We take only, the
Yep.
finest and the best, and it's really exclusive. And the companies come in and have a conversation with different people. Maybe you just don't know what you're talking about. And, I did that. But beyond it all, I had peace with my decision.
Hmm.
To your question, I think it's just that it's it's difficult. I won't lie and say it was an extremely easy decision to take the less obvious choice. But I think something you and I have talked about in the past, that you wouldn't know your values. You don't know if you are straying from your values if you've not thought about them, you've not prayed about
Right.
them, and you've not written them down.
Right.
I think for me, it was written down, it was on paper, and it was, this is where I want to go in life.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of job I want. These are the kind of people I want to meet. This is the kind of person I want to marry.
Yep.
So it was almost like I'll say roadmap, but
Yeah.
more like a charter for life. And, basically just coming from a quiet moment with
Yeah.
myself, with God, with Bible and paper. And, I think it's that principle that guided me at that particular point in time, making a tough choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think kind of guided me through life. Just to summarize, it's
Mm-hmm.
having that moment or several moments in life to just sit down and say, where am I meant to be going?
Right.
Coming from within, coming from God with an answer and putting it down on paper.
Yeah.
That is a starting point, I think.
Excellent. I have a similar approach, and I think what you've mentioned, many pieces, but writing it down has been helpful for me because I can look at it over time and revisit. Why did I put this down? Is it really something that it came from my own head, or where did it come from? And maybe it does change over time and over your life, but it's been a good regular practice, once a year or every so often.
Yeah.
What do I care about and why? And where does that come from? And for you and for me, going to God and the Bible to discern some of that has been extremely helpful. But go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Question for you. Do you ever have a moment of doubt to say, you know what? I mean, this really looks so good, but
Oh,
it's not in line with what I've written down.
yeah.
It must be from God, surely. Shouldn't I just pursue this instead? Do you ever have this moment of doubt?
Yeah, yes, I have. I have that happen regularly. It has happened recently. Different sort of opportunities or situations present themselves and look pretty good. And if you don't think about it too much, you might just go for it. And even if you think about it too much, you might still go for it. But that's where, going back to the values and kind of the priorities in life, for me, it's God, my faith, my family, my friends and community, and then my work, keeping those things in harmony and balance is really important. And some of those opportunities would throw all those things out of balance. And so even though in the short term it might look pretty good, or if you're taking it just from maybe a financial lens, it might look pretty good. But
Exactly, yeah.
if you're thinking about a holistic life and kind of the purpose of the life, it goes a different direction than some people might take.
Yeah, I think maybe just picking one point you made there about the holistic approach. I think that's I mean, looking back at that particular instance, and maybe other points, other transition points in my career where I could have gone one way or the other.
Mm.
I suspect that when you have like a holistic approach to life, when it's not just, I want the job with the highest profile or the highest pay. When you think about it in continuum, like you said, God, family, the career, whatever else that is unique to every individual. When you look at things like that, I think it helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think it helps.
totally agree. And so maybe talk to me a little about where you've had to make some tough choices yourself, where you've, could have compromised on some of your values and got ahead personally. I think probably if people haven't had that chance in their life, they will at some point. You can always get a leg up on somebody or financially or otherwise if you decide to step on somebody versus walk along next to somebody. So that's where values come in. I think you've mentioned you have a pretty tangible experience that maybe helped get you to where you are now.
Yeah, I like that question because it kind of drags us back from, a point where it sounds as if once you have the values, then all goes smooth. That is not the case.
Right.
You know?
There's a
You know,
funny quote. Not everybody would love it, but there's a Mike Tyson quote that's everybody has a plan until you get hit in the face.
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, the punch in the face for me came. I mean, if I could pick one, the
Yeah.
biggest one in my life so far was probably in. I mean, I was at a job where I was enjoying myself. I was doing very well. I had a very good run on the job, and then I just faced a situation where very clearly a superior staff, one of my managers wanted me to take a different route. It was one of, if you listen to me, if you're loyal to me, and I mean, you'll get everything you want. You'll get a promotion, you'll get salary increases, you'll get everything you want. But if you're not, the door. And in a very specific instance, it was one where effectively I had to choose between defending one of my own subordinates with this person, or just going with what I wanted, like everybody else did, and the benefit. And I wouldn't say it was easy, but yeah, in a way it was easy. I mean, I think in that instance where there was somebody else involved, I just knew there was no way I will hurt that person unjustifiably
Mm-hmm.
for my own benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But I was at peace with it. I knew that if I defended the truth, I told the truth about this person that they were actually hardworking rather than a slouch like the spirit wanted it to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that it will kind of be like the beginning of the end for me within the organization, which turned out to be true. But I just trusted God that there was no way I could have done that. So this has to work out well.
Right.
To cut a long story short, I mean, when the end came within the organization, I was like, okay, I'm going to walk away from it all. I've had a good time. I've had a tough time because of the choices I made to defend my values, but I'm sure everything will be fine. And I had zero plans. Um, but you won't believe it. Within 2 weeks of living, I just thought, you know what, I'll take some time after working 14 years here. I'll take some time, relax, and maybe travel, maybe just do something. Within 2 weeks, I'll say the path, the journey to where I am today started within 2 weeks.
Wow.
And just a call out of blues, someone is looking for someone to do this. I'm like, okay, I've registered a company, I'll do it for you. And I had a first consulting gig 2 weeks after leaving my job, which was a huge validation for me to say, okay, I mean, leaving the big brands behind, I could actually command, I could create value.
Right.
It's that door that opened led to another door that opened that led me to found Caena in February this year. All within,
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. And between then and now, it's that constant thing. You don't know where the future leads, but it's just one little door opening. You step through in faith, and then many, many more open through that.
Yep.
So I feel like I've spoken. I think it's a long to answer the question, but yeah, I think that's it for me.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I think a thing that's on my mind and a lot of folks, if they're thinking about being entrepreneurial or just whatever you're doing in life, the way you've kind of characterized it, it's a collaboration with God. You're co-creating. He invites us into working with him in these sort of endeavors in our lives. And so the way you kind of describe that, God gave you this opportunity, and look at this amazing set of experiences you've had, all the ingredients you have, and now you're cooking up something really awesome, which is really neat. And I appreciate and respect that you're doing that, and it's not easy, obviously.
It it is, and it's funny you use the word co-create. I have it written down here as well
Huh,
because that is what it is. It is co-creation.
right.
I think you and I talked about this as well, where there's a view at times that everything's going to be fine. Maybe Christian, maybe psychology, that positive thinking, that
Yeah.
everything's going to be fine. I take a slightly different approach to say it will be rough. Jesus Christ had it rough. I mean, he had points where he had
Sure.
doubt, but it's going to end up well.
Right.
Stay
Yeah.
on the right path, it's going to end up well. You face through adversity, you face moments of temptation, you face moments of doubt, moments of mini failures, but it's
Yeah.
going to end up well because we are co-creating with God.
Right. Yeah. No, that's, I think, a really good way to put it. I think of it in a similar way. And hope, is the word that springs to my mind. When I'm close to God and really trying to follow his lead, then I have a lot of hope. And what Jesus brings is a lot of hope. And so even when things are dark or challenging, I still have hope. But it doesn't change the fact that it might be uncomfortable in the moment. Like when you just ran the London marathon, at some point in there, you probably were feeling a little down, but you were hopeful because you knew your training was good.
Yes, yes. I penned a blog about my experiences from the marathon, and one of the key things I was talking about there is training and consistency works.
Mm-hmm.
It's when the chips are down, when you're facing a dark period, you have to rely on something.
Yeah.
In terms of the marathon, it's the training and just trust in myself and the process. In life, it's most times it's just God. You just know that there is a path there. You can't see it, and as human beings, it's so frustrating that you can't really see that path. You want to see the left turn and the right turn. You want to be in control,
Yeah.
but no. When you walk in with God, you cannot see beyond your nose, but
Right.
just go anyway.
Yeah, that's the truth. I have a tendency to want to be in control a lot of times, and I work on that regularly to release that. I'd like to hear more about Caena, though, and kind of what your vision there is. You're co-creating. It is able to serve a lot of different groups, individuals, and companies. So just what gets you excited about Caena and what you're doing? Tell us a little about that.
No, I will for Caena as well. I want to go back almost 20 years. But
Excellent.
the startup I founded when I was in college in 2003, 2004. I realized then that in school it was just this happy-go-lucky place. Everyone was happy. You're depending on the parents, and there was just no worries in the world. But I was in touch with you know also students who had graduated and gone on into career or they've gone into the world of work. And it was like night and day. It was like, you guys are having fun. You don't know what awaits you out there. And, when they tell you in full about the experiences, there was that thing of, trepidation that, oh, I'm having a good time in school. Number one, school is done. Most of 9 times out of 10, it's pain. And I just thought, okay, what if, the students on campus in school can know what is out there so they can prepare themselves? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, why is there enough not being done to prepare students for life outside school?
Mm.
I looked around, there's nothing. And cut a long story short, founded a team and we started publishing a magazine. So we'll interview former students of the same university. They talk about their experiences, what has helped them as they've gone on into the world of work. And it was called Inspire Magazine. It was called
Nice.
Inspire. And we ran it for 4 years. It was 4 awesome years, extremely painful at times, but it really built my character, built me. And for me, it was just beautiful, helping one student or the other in terms giving them information.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I go back to that story because it's about the same thing for Sina. I always want to I want to make money. I want to grow. I want recognition, but I want to do so while impacting others.
Yep.
So for Caena, it was a realization that a lot of, small business owners struggle,
Yeah.
struggle to access funding, struggle to grow. And I had that personal experience in my own home. My wife, she's a tech founder, and she just had this moment of frustration and pain anytime she needed to approach investors or stakeholders to raise funds. And it was just, okay. I could understand because I was an investment banker. So I could see that all our processes were very tedious. I mean, I could see at times we would take 3 months to get back to a client, and the client says, but you should have told me much earlier, you're just stringing them along. Different things. I could see the why of why the problem she was facing. I could see it. So that's the second thing. I saw the problem with her. As a banker, I could understand the root causes. And then, with MIT, when I came to MIT, when I just started the program, first of all, distance learning, and then traveled down to Cambridge. For me, it was I wanted to find a better job. I thought, okay, with MIT, meeting people, I'll find a job. But that didn't happen. But a much better thing happened. I saw, I learned new things. I broadened my horizons. I met new people. And I think that MIT journey gave me the how to solve that problem that I've seen with small business owners. And yeah, now we're using algorithms, we're automating financial models to start with. And then the several pain points for small business owners we've identified. With time, we'll just digitize it and make it easier for startup founders to raise funds and grow.
Yeah.
One example, one of the best businesses out there for me personally is Canva. A couple of years ago, if you wanted to put up an ad or design a flyer, you'll pay someone to do it, or you go learn Photoshop. But now everybody can do that.
Yep.
And it's empowering so many people to just be able to, because they're reducing the barriers to entry for businesses, or MailChimp, or, some of those things that where you had to hire someone or there was a huge expense involved, but now you can do it all by yourself online. That's the kind of vision I have for Caena, where in the next few years, everyone will be able to go in there, build their financial models, connect with investors, access all the tools they need to raise funds and grow. And yes, to be honest, we're still a far way off from the vision I have, but we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's such a cool concept, and that you're making it happen is great. I think it's if you step back and say you were really excited about this to co-create and collaborate, you get to do that on such a scale with more founders and other companies are going to start up. I mean, really exciting to help them accomplish their dreams as well. So I look forward to seeing the continued growth and dream coming to life with your company. That's great.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I mean, maybe one more point there, back to that co-creation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a recurring word today because you've got it written now, I've got it written down. It's if it's not yet 1 year since I left my job, and to be honest, I look back at the success or what we've achieved with Caena so far, and I'm like, this is amazing in such a short period. But it may surprise you and the listeners to hear that I didn't have this plan fully fleshed out. Say before I left the bank, for instance, I didn't have the money waiting. I didn't have everything waiting. That whole thing of one thing leading to the other, like, just a path and then you follow and then other paths open. Maybe this time last year, I knew that I wanted to solve this problem, but I thought surely the answer must be that it's because it's such a big problem. Maybe an organization that wants to solve that problem as well will hire me, and I will help them solve that problem, and I will solve that problem for many people. But as I tried, I interviewed, I applied to several big companies, big investment banks, the tech companies, trying to get in to say, okay, I want to solve this big problem. Come get me. Come let me help you do it. But it took me a while to realize maybe I have everything I need to actually start out solving that problem. And I'm glad that I started with what I have. And that's one thing, again, one theme of my life is I just start with something. Whatever you have in your hand. It's like the parable of the talents.
Yeah.
You may have one, you may have two, you may have five. If you have one, I think, why don't I have five? Okay, you know what? I'm not going to do anything with it, which happens to every one of us.
Yeah.
That's a problem. But if you have one or two or five, that is exactly what you need to get to the next step where you'll have more. I think that's a story for Caena as well. Whatever little I had, I started out with it, and doors have been opening onto me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, great ideas there. And it comes from such a strong place, that well is deep and can fill you in the hard times, really. And I was kind of thinking about that. Clearly you're challenging yourself and stretching yourself.
Yep. Yeah.
Where does that motivation really come from? And I mean, how do you sustain it? I think I know. I have a pretty good idea, but I'd love to hear you just kind of like, those days that are really hard, you look yourself in the mirror and you're just like, whoa, what am I doing? Why am I going to keep going? How do you work through that in your head? Everybody has those moments in their life in different scenarios. So, just sharing whatever's working for you, maybe that'll help somebody else.
Maybe a topical example, but like a lot of people I'm watching the Squid Game, and where I was last night was, sorry, I'm bad with names, but where the player 456, met is Gambi or whatever it is, and it's like, why did you create this game? And it was like, because we had myself and my other VIPs, we had everything we wanted in life. And, there was really no excitement anymore. And they then had to go look for something to excite themselves, which is this horrible thing. I use the example because I think the opposite has been it for me. Like I touched on previously, I grew up in a home where there was just enough to go to school and maybe nothing else. But over time, I realized that the adversity actually just formed me, made me a better person, made me work harder in school, made me always come close to the top of my class because I knew that was my only option. When I went to college and I was running a business at the same time, I found out I was more efficient and effective because I was doing many things at the same time. And it surprises to realize I was performing better in class than those that had all the time in the world to study.
Right.
So I think very early in life, I learned to celebrate adversity and just realize that it's adversity builds character. It prepares you for the future. It's training.
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of one, that's knowing that adversity is just leading you to a bigger place, and then just trusting God. Because if things are painful, and like we talk about for the marathon, if it's painful and you have no certainty that you're going to get to the finish line, you'll give up and you turn back and head home. But just having that certainty in God that whatever you're going through is only temporary, and it's for a bigger purpose. There's always there has to be that certainty. If it's not there, then any adversity is just punishment.
Yeah.
But but just having that certainty, that assurance that any adversity you're facing is going to lead to a bigger place, it's for a higher purpose. I think it's the second key component.
Sure. Oh, that's great. We've kind of gone around this in adversity, keeping going through the hard times. How do you do that when you're taking a risk intentionally too? When I think of adversity, it's like hard things are happening to you, but there's a difference too when you're piling it on yourself by taking a big chance. So how do you kind of work through that too, to motivate yourself to take a big step? Kind of the why behind that, and what are your thoughts so you can keep going when you've inflicted it on yourself? Maybe that is like the marathon too.
Yeah, it is exactly like a marathon. A couple of things there. I think it's actually better when you inflict it on yourself, because you can tell yourself why. It's if it's inflicted on you, you think, I don't want this. Why am I getting it?
Yeah.
But and another example, I went to a military school when I was 10 years old, and guess what? It was very far from home. I had to fly.
Hmm.
I was basically a kid, and I just told my parents I want to go away from home. I mean, everybody was going to the next school in the neighborhood. I was like, no, I want to go from home. I want to go to military school. Are you sure? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. We'll make it happen. They made it happen, and I got there, and it was. I mean, we were kids, but it was camouflage. It was military training. It was rifle training. It was the full work.
Sure. Yeah.
And of course, I had a change of. I was like, no, this is painful. This is what I expected.
Mm-hmm.
But while I had friends who would jump the fence and go back home because, you know what, their parents forced them to do it.
Yep.
For me, I'm like, I'm staying. I got myself here. I have personal pride. I will not go tell my parents I can't do it.
Sure.
You know, it took 3 years for my parents to realize that I wasn't actually having a ball. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, but you could have come to tell us to say you don't want to go anymore and we'll change schools for you. I'm like, no, but I mean, I said I wanted to go there. So I can't come back to tell you, you know, I don't want to do it. Yeah. I have to make it work. So I think, you know, this whole adversity thing, you know, not talking about it now, actually goes way back.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of realized that, you know, and it's, you know, when there's, maybe it goes back to that co-creation thing as well with God. Maybe I'm starting to think like a parent now with a 5-year-old daughter.
Yep.
Like if you know this better than I do, but you wanted to do something and you sit down with them and explain and make it look like their decision. You know, if it's tough, they stand a better chance of seeing it through, sure, rather than say, you go do that, you know, yeah, go get that done. So I think that kind of explains how I approach this self-inflicted pain, yeah, self-inflicted adversity. Yeah. You know, maybe it's a marathon, obstacle courses, yeah, if it's starting a business.
Yeah.
But you mentioned one thing. I want to throw one thing back at you. Yeah. I'm sure you've also had experiences like this. You know, I'm dealing with self-inflicted adversity and risk.
Yeah.
What helps you? What helps you through?
Yeah. Prayer and reflection help a lot, and doing that regularly. And then if it's really a hard load, it's getting clear on like what I need to prioritize and stop doing. A lot of times I may be too busy, take on a lot of stuff, but if it's something that's really important and really hard, I got to take it extra serious and clear a few things off the plate so I can have enough time to do whatever it is well. And so it could be taking an inventory of, I've used, like, these are practical tools. This is just like real talk. Time audit. Like, what am I spending my time on during the day? Oh my goodness, I have spent a lot of time on stuff that really is insignificant or a waste of time. I mean, social media or other sort of things. So getting rid of things that I shouldn't be spending time on to take care of the things that are most important is a big one. And then staying healthy enough, you know, mentally, spiritually, physically, and with my family unit too, to make sure like, okay, this is sustainable. And so all those are hard things, but those are kind of practices and tools I go through to think, okay, how do I keep going on this if it's really hard? It's making sure I have the fortitude to see it through, and then the alignment with other people that I, you know, value their opinions and I'm doing life with, so we can do it. It's not just me. I'm doing it. And again, does it line back with kind of where I think God wants me to be spending my time? Are these things that I think are worth doing in the world? And like you said, if those things are in sync, then feels like I can just keep going through about anything. I don't really think about like burnout or, doesn't mean it could be hard, but I can sustain it, you know, and that's where kind of the hope stays in the front of my mind too. Like, yeah, I can do this. It's hard, but I can keep doing it. And each day got to renew it.
Yeah. Thanks for that. One thing I want to, you know, pick up there is, you know, you talk about the alignment. I mean, earlier on, you talked about the balance between, you know, God, family, career. Mm-hmm. I'll go back to the marathon analogy. Mm-hmm. It, for most of the race, it's a personal, I mean, it's a solo sport.
Yeah.
But actually, it is actually a team one, because there are people I train with. There are supporters that I don't know what there. But then there's my family who, you know, are there for me every single step of the way. Right. My wife encourages me. My daughter does. While I was running, you know, last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, I knew that my wife and daughter were going to be somewhere on the course. and I knew they were going to be near the end because they were, no matter what it takes, no matter how many people are on the street, they will find a way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, it's a team. I mean, a lot of things that look like solo efforts are actually better, much better when they are treated like a team effort. So for me, adversity has to be a team effort. You
Mm-hmm.
have to have a team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and I think choosing that team is extremely important.
Yeah, you're right about that. Maybe talk about that a little bit as you've built teams over the years. Kind of what sort of thoughts go into when you're bringing people into work and co-labor with you on certain things. Probably a lot of these same aspects we're talking about now are traits or attributes of people who are successful that you've worked with.
I mean, maybe the first thing I want to talk about in terms of building teams is maybe I've just got lucky because I feel, I mean, honestly, like incredibly blessed with the team around me, starting from my home unit, my wife, and also with my, my co-founder with Caena, the staff. At times, there's someone I interviewed who works with me today. I was like, why do you want to come work for a company who is at a very early stage of, its life? And, but she's still there 3-4 months. And I mean, my entire team, they've been there with me. No one has left. The first thing I want to say is maybe I'm lucky, but I think not. I think it all goes back to that thing of actually just sitting down and saying, what do you want? When I wanted a co-founder, I sat down and said, what am I looking for? And I basically just put it down, drew a matrix, the tables, what are the top most important characteristics, what are the next, which ones can I compromise on, which ones can't I? It made it search longer than it needed to be, but it helps, when you know, when you have it written down. So I think it always goes back to that whole, what exactly are you looking for?
Sure.
It may be the priorities, it may be the values, it may be the roadmap in life, but identifying them, putting them down on paper, and then going around with that paper in your pocket to go look for.
Right.
I think it's the most important thing.
That's great. Appreciate that. Maybe shifting gears a little bit because you've had several years of career so far, but we all have quite a bit of road ahead of us too. What are some of the things that you've done to build like a background and set of knowledge that will give you so much optionality as the unpredictable future unfolds? I mean, Caena is great. It's going to do great. But we all are always thinking like, 20 years from now, what might I be doing? Or 15 years from now. So how do you think about building a, unlimited career or just investing in yourself so you're ready for an unknown future?
That's a very interesting one because, I mean, while you were asking the question, I kind of just looked back and I tried to trace the arc of my journey. Mechanical engineering, undergraduate, ended up starting a magazine somewhere in between, went into banking, had several movements within that. And then now I am leading a software firm. So, and I mean, I think through it all, it's, I'll say maybe it's just three things. One is just being a very extremely aggressive with learning, every learning opportunity, be it, no matter what it is, if it's adversity, be it anything, be it playing, be it friendships, effectively selling a house to go to school, to go to MIT, whatever it is, be extremely aggressive about knowledge acquisition and learning, formal and informal.
That's one of my favorites too. I do that. I'm a much better student after I graduated from undergrad than when I was in undergrad. And I've only become more of a learner each day. Really, I love it.
Exactly. So I think that is when you just realize that learning actually starts when formal education is over. Then I think it really just helps. I mean, honestly, if we're going to stop on one thing to help, deal with an uncertain, unpredictable life, I would say it's just that. It's that learning, having that base of learning. But if we're going to throw other things into the mix, it's taking risks. It's trusting God. It is having a plan. a plan, a rough plan, and then maybe the plan one is very important. I would like your take on that planning thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
But my approach to planning is to have a rough sketch.
Mm-hmm.
Say this is what I want to achieve. This is what I think God wants me, where I think God wants me to achieve. But being very flexible on the how.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, putting it very roughly, that is my approach. I'd
Yep.
like to hear how you approach this as well.
Similar. I think of it kind of in like zones. What are some things that I really think I'm actually pretty good at? And maybe that's some of my fortunate gifting or strengths that God's given me. What are some areas, that I have a lot of energy for whatever reason, which are similar, and then not specific sorts of jobs or work, but concepts of like I love working with people and teams
Yeah.
and building communities. That could go a lot of different ways. I love technology. I love, creating the future of technology, but I also have like a history under, minor and think, well, learn from the past to make the future better. And so these sort of things are zones of knowledge and experience and competency that I'm like, okay, as long as I'm working in these zones somehow and they're overlapping a lot, I'll probably be doing my best work. And there's lots of those zones. Then I'm kind of mapping out the world around me. Where are some of these zones? Where can I be, finding my highest points of contribution where I can just overlap a lot of these layers of things that I'm decent at and really enjoy, and where they can add a big contribution to the world.
Okay, I've got it, and yeah, very helpful. But one thing you mentioned there was about your strengths and what you're very good at. So, I mean, on the flip side, if there are some areas where you are lacking, do you try to correct for those, or you ignore them and just focus on the strengths?
It's been helpful for me to learn where some of my weaknesses are over the years. I think a lot of people are blind to them. Honestly, I probably was in a lot of ways, and in some areas, then I had to decide: are these weaknesses a real big problem that I need to address? And if so, then I would work on them. Or if they're just one that's
Okay.
not a detriment but not an asset, then I probably won't spend time on them. I just know, all right, that's not an area that I'm going to be adding a lot of value. But there are some where I've like realized that I need to improve, so that it isn't a liability. It may take it from a liability to a neutral, maybe not all the way to an asset, but as I've grown, I've needed to eliminate some liabilities that I have in my strengths or weaknesses as well. So that's been kind of my approach to those. But I definitely have really tried to leverage my strengths a lot.
Okay, that sounds good.
And you?
Yeah, I think it's more a strengthening as well. Effectively just knowing those areas where you're good at,
Mm-hmm.
and but also just like the very important thing. One important thing that I want to pick up the way you talked about zones, and there's where I can say maybe I'm a banker and I want to grow exponentially there. But there was also for me at some point the realization that that particular path may not be the best going forward because the industry was shifting,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that technology was going to be more and more an important thing in the future. And I just sought to learn. So, but maybe it came from a confidence to realize that it wasn't a deep area of weakness,
Right.
but just one where I didn't know much about and I could just seek to know. So
Sure.
I think it's those zones where it was close enough for me to be able to go pursue
Mm-hmm.
my knowledge in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Well, I think we're about through what we had planned to talk about. Anything else that you wanted to add at the end? Any plugs for your own blog or Caena or anything else? I'm happy to give you the floor for a minute.
Okay. Well, I was going to take. I was going to try and ask a few more questions from you.
Sure.
But yeah, maybe before I do that, I would just say, what we're trying to achieve is to understand the pain points for young entrepreneurs, for early stage entrepreneurs. So yeah, I think everything I do starts from that, further understanding and understanding pain points better. So I think I do. But if anybody is listening, I want to tell me about what pains they're experiencing with their business or with their ideas. I'll be more than happy to hear. But other than that, yeah, for them to just check out what we're building at Caena, it's caena.io. And then, yeah, send me feedback. I want to hear everything.
Awesome. Well, unless you want to hit me up with any of your extra innings questions, I think we can wrap it up. I'll let you get ready for your evening. It's pretty late for you now.
Yeah, I think this has gone by really quickly. So many thanks for inviting me, for the opportunity.
Many thanks to you for
have
joining.
This chat with you.
Yeah, no, it's been a real honor to get to reconnect with you and spend a little more time with you. This has been awesome. I really appreciate it, and we'll keep doing it.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Yeah. Big thanks to George Fox Digital for producing this podcast. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to the George Fox Talks podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you stream from. And if you want to dig in more to this stuff or see what else George Fox community is talking about, check out georgefox.edu/talks or by searching on YouTube for George Fox Talks.